Now then, that should now be working again. This I've been, was it last night or the night before? I was doing that. I was talking for a good 10 minutes and I did have the mic muted. Today I didn't have the mic muted, it just wasn't working. Antivirus, stop telling me about Edge. Very occasionally the interface box, the analog to digital converter, doesn't seem to connect properly on USB when the machine starts up, which is nothing to do with Windows 10 because it was doing exactly the same thing on Windows 7. I think what I'll have to do is move it to another hub on the machine and see if it makes a difference. I noticed this afternoon it hadn't properly attached, and then I fixed that and it did it again. You'll have to learn to lip read, mind you. I don't. I'm not sure if the stream is good enough to actually lip read from, but good evening. Fear Reaper 7, good evening. You have Windows 10. How do you like it, Just Jessup? I was busy talking about video editing software and the fact that I couldn't work out what day it was, and eventually sort of looked at the PC clock and hovered the mouse over it to get that information. And then I was talking about video editing software. Now I'm keeping an eye out for some new software, not particularly actively keeping an eye out, but keeping an eye out. One that will handle multiple video and audio channels simultaneously. So that rules out quite a few of the cheaper low-end stuff, but how nice it would be to have something like Adobe Premiere, but not when it means paying for the full suite, which is what I'd have to do, because the Adobe program lets you have one. You can rent one application, or you have to rent them all. You can't have, well, apart from the photographic package, which gives you Lightroom as well, but it's kind of one or all, and the all is expensive. It would be nice to have two. I don't know, but towards the end of your session it got a bit laggy. I haven't actually ever noticed that myself yet, Just Jessup, but one thing I became painfully aware of, shall we say, is that after the update it wants to re-index all your software. Well, everything, not your files, the whole lot. It doesn't pick up the index from the previous version of Windows. It has to do it all for itself, which does tend to make it bog down a little bit. Mine's still doing it. It's obviously going to take several days, but I gather it's not supposed to do it if you're using the machine. So would your old machine do exactly the same thing? You can. I was about to say you can. I'm not actually sure whether you can buy a license outright. I think actually you can buy a license outright at the moment to Adobe software. But something like Photoshop, for example, is, I don't know, it's something like about £300–400 to buy. And if you if you skip every other update cycle, so you go for 2 years before you buy an upgrade, you're still spending more money than going through a subscription program, which you pay. You have well, actually no, you can pay on a monthly basis, or you can pay an annual fee on a monthly basis, or you can pay a multi-annual fee on a monthly basis. But when you sort of, if you want to keep your software up to date, it's definitely the cheaper way of doing it. The only issue with that, yes, Colour Monkey, I know. The only issue with the monthly licenses is if you stop paying, you stop having access. Whereas if you bought a full license, then of course you can continue using that version of software for as long as it runs. But as I was mentioning, at the moment they have a one or all. You can't sort of just say, I want to rent, I don't know, Photoshop and Premiere, for example, and which or Illustrator or something like that. So it would kind of be nice. I know they've just been conducting some surveys about how people would, what sort of prices people would pay, and how they'd like to purchase Adobe software. And some of the options were about sort of individual applications being available, so not a case of one or all. It was, pick one or more that you want at something, well, to me in pounds, about £7 or £8 per application per month. And some of them were somewhat more expensive options than that. They sort of would you pay type of thing. And it was a bit of an annoying survey anyway, because it's kind of like, would you pay £10 a month or £120 a year? Well, I'd pay either, if I wanted to pay that, if you see what I mean. But it wouldn't let you answer either. That or that is okay, but I wouldn't pay £20 a month, or I wouldn't pay for 10 days usage throughout the year, or stuff like that. And it kind of was really frustrating to answer it. No, don't do that, Just Jessup. It would of course be illegal to do. Apart from the cracking would be illegal in some countries to do, and I don't know about the UK. It just kind of wouldn't be right. It's copyright software. I wouldn't like people breaking copyright on my stuff, so why should I do it to other people's stuff? If it's too expensive, then I don't use it. I use something else, which is cheaper and maybe does the job just as well, or certainly for the facilities I want just as well. What then happens, of course, is the competitor gains market share. If you start using crack software, then apart from the fact you don't know what they've actually done with the software, you've got no support for it at all in any shape or form. But the other thing is, you're kind of still using the software, so the competitors don't win, so Adobe still sort of come out as the leading software. And surveys that say, do you use, and don't ask, still sort of people would still sort of say Adobe, and in actual fact they've not paid for it, but they're just artificially bolstering up all the figures and things like that. So if I can't find it, I'll find an alternative. That might be free, it might be open source, or it might be paid for, but I'd rather do that. I mean, ultimately, none of it's mandatory or necessary to use. I don't know about that, Just Jessup. It's a feature I actually quite like, and I've had it on Windows 8. Actually, we've had it on Windows 8. So I've kind of got used to it with Windows 8. I'm just having a look. I can turn that off now. Yes, you can. If you right click on the taskbar at the bottom and select properties, it will pop up the task and start menu properties display panel. At the bottom end of that, it's got a section called multiple displays, and there's a tick box there to show the taskbar on all displays. And you can also customize something about it, so it looks like you can do. A fan of open software? Rain Clouds, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see you back. Thank you for joining. I'm a big fan of open source. I'm a big fan of software that works and does the job it's meant to do. And if that's open source or it's free, and that the two are not synonymous with each other, because open source software can still ask you to pay for it. Etc. Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted just then. But if it doesn't do the job or it doesn't work, then it doesn't matter whether it's open source or not. So I have a preference for software that works, does what it says it does, and does what I need it to do. If it happens to be free and open source as well, great. If it's commercial and free, fine. It's I think there is a somewhat slight if it's open source it must be better type of thing, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But anyway, how are you today? Well, I am was confused as to even what day it was. That's an artifact of working from home, and that I'm at home 7 days a week, and therefore kind of sometimes lose track of the days. But apart from that, I am feeling not too bad, thank you, and I hope you are as well. Okay, you got it set up. Yeah. Oh well, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, one of my monitors are set up as a backwards L shape, so I was about to draw that way. So I've got a big monitor here in sort of the centre. I've got one that's set up above it and one to the left, and in fact the stuff I'm looking at now is off to the left, and my big monitor, which is the Cintiq, is sat to my right here, and the other one, which I generally use for reference pictures while I'm drawing, I can't normally see with the Cintiq setup as it is at the moment. That'll change when I get a bit more space. All three monitors are going in a line, but I personally do quite like the taskbar down on this monitor and pointing down here at this monitor. But I can understand if it's in a funny position, that it's not necessarily great. Yeah, OBS is open source. Indeed it is. And it does the job. If it didn't do the job, I wouldn't be using it. I mean, there are there are sort of things where it might not do the job. It might not do the job I want it to do now, type of thing, because I've got either more sophisticated or got different set of requirements. It certainly acts, if nothing else, software which is free to try, shall we say, forgetting open source arguments for the moment, it is great because it lets you work out whether it does what you want, or whether software of that type is of any use to you now. So it's great. Like OBS, for example, is great to work out whether you like broadcasting. It just happens to be good enough for everything I want it to do as well. But there again, I've never tried things like XSplit or DxStory, I think it is. But there again, I have looked at them in the past, but they didn't seem to do anything different, or shall we say anything significantly enough different that I want it to use it for to make it worth paying for. If it did, I'd be quite happy to pay for it, considering, well, with the consideration that I thought what they were asking was worth it. You see, that's you might be surprised. I mean, open source doesn't mean it's not a big company. Java, which was open source, which was Oracle now. I forgot who it was that made it. Sun Microsystems held the license to it, but open sourced it. Open source effectively only means that you have access to the source and you can read it. It doesn't mean you can use the application for free. That depends on the license. So having access to the source being open, doesn't necessarily imply it's free software. So you do have to sort of check that as well before you just go ahead and grab source and compile it for yourself. And I do know quite a few big firms do contribute quite a lot of effort to what is open source software. The big advantage of open source software is that you are able to read the source, so you are reasonably confident of what's in it. And if you have a license which lets you use that software and compile it yourself, then you can be extremely certain of what's in it because you've just compiled it yourself if you've read the code. But a lot of companies are finding, what you are thinking of as open source, people contributing to it. A lot of companies are finding that having software where people can, issue a pull request, for example, can actually be extremely helpful and in all sorts of ways. No, Windows 8 was fine. There wasn't anything wrong with Windows 8. Windows 8 was a heck of a lot better than Windows 7. It was certainly better than XP. I don't necessarily agree that Windows 8 was an example of a big corporation having closed source software. Things like Office brings more money into Microsoft than the operating systems did. Zara, did you force your computer to upgrade? I did. No, it's a force, Jessup. It should not do it without your permission. I didn't reserve a copy on the big machine. I did reserve a copy on the sacrificial machine, but I upgraded it before the reservation downloaded the software. The as I understand it, the reservation process was put you in a queue for the upgrader to download the upgrade for you, but not to apply it. But I just downloaded the upgrader myself and kicked it off, and then it went ahead and did it. But it prepped everything and then said, "Are you sure you want to do it?" And then I said yes, and away it went. So no, it doesn't. It didn't just happen. Theory bomber stream resuming. I've not seen any statistics. I can't agree or disagree with that. I am aware a lot of them use XSplit. So, but whether or not that's a large percentage or a small percentage, I'm not sure. I've not seen any statistics on that, and I'm not about to make up internet statistics. I feel a lot of people do, but no idea how many. Creative Commons, yeah, okay, well that's no. Don't make that mistake again. It's the license that lets people build on software, not the open source. I know the two get a kind of people sort of confuse them. Open source means you've got access to the source. It's open for you to read. Doesn't mean it's open for you to use. That's the license, whether it's Creative Commons or one of the other licenses where it explicitly gives you permission to build upon that software or to do certain things with it. You can have a closed license with open source software. And if you were to compile your own software and use it with from that source without having the correct license, it would still be illegal. But the open licensing, which says, yes, you can build on this, yes, you can do X, Y, and Z, and yes, you can have a license for no money. Yeah, great. And it does, as you say, accrue quite a lot of benefits in that way. What was it about Windows 8 you didn't really like? Because for most people, almost the one thing that most people didn't like was the start menu. Almost everything else about Windows 8 people had no idea of. Because it's all in the background, it's the operating system. It just does things, and it didn't particularly do things in a user visible way differently. It had a different set of libraries. It had a slightly different way of handling permission management and driver management and things like that. But to the average person, that would have been no different to Windows 7. The highly visible thing was just the start menu, and it was just bigger menu entries, really, to all intents and purposes. Or you had two menus. You had an alphabetical menu and you had a menu which was laid out how you wanted it to lay out, if you see what I mean. You had a bit more control over it. But I haven't come across any developers that didn't like Windows 8, and I haven't come across anybody that didn't like Windows 8 for anything other than the menu stuff. because it starts faster from shutdown. It was generally a more nippy operating system. I mean, for example, the difference between the same machine on Windows 7 would take 30 minutes to boot from cold to being logged in and complete. Exactly the same machine on Windows 8 running exactly the same startup, if you like, to start up applications after login, 5 minutes cold to fully booted. That was a completely, apart from that, all the same applications worked in exactly the same way. You had 2 taskbars, one on each window if you'd more than one window. That was something that you noticed. You could pin things to the start menu as well as the taskbar. That was different. But, yeah. Fear Reaper, they do. Don't fall into that trap. Microsoft listen to a heck of a lot of people. They run focus groups. They've got customer groups. They listen to big customers as well. Large organisations. They listen to the partners. They have a whole system of partners and levels of partners to do with all sorts of things, and they do listen to them. The organisation that I work for, they have a Microsoft partnership. Microsoft frequently are asking them about software, and things that go wrong with software or complaints get fed back to Microsoft. They do take notice and quite often fix things. What you get though is you'll get somebody who goes, I don't like, and Microsoft aren't listening to me because they haven't fixed it. Well, if there's tens of millions of people saying it, they do. If you like, tens of millions of people said they don't like the start menu, they fixed it. Or if you like, with Windows 8 you didn't have the same start menu, you had a swipe on menu, they gave you back the start button. Windows 10, they've changed the look and feel again. You say they're not listening? Why did they do that? They said people don't like Metro and the desktop apps, and that's kind of gone away now. They are the same. You can run them either in full screen or separately, and it's the same app. I mean, that was an irritating thing about Windows 8. Explorer Metro and Explorer Desktop were different beasts. Actually the same application, but in the context that you launched it gave a different interface, which was a pain in the neck, because then they were almost different. You didn't have the same shortcuts and things like that. Which did I get, Home or Pro? Actually I don't know, to be honest. It might have been Home on one and Pro on the other, I think, on the big machine. No, I don't necessarily agree with that. The start menu, yes, was aimed more at tablets. Actually, the start menu was aimed more at touchscreens. Because it was quite easy to get to the start menu with a touchscreen. You just swiped left or right and your start menu popped up. And it took full screen, but when you've got enough applications, your old Windows 7 start menu took up full screen as well. And it's kind of like everything. Everybody always likes what they know. Something new is always has been sort of, oh, this isn't as good as the old one, and I don't like this because it's different. And people didn't really, if you like, you wanted it immediately to be Windows 7 like, so you didn't actually give it a chance to see, to see and use it. I actually found it a heck of a lot easier to find things on the Windows 8 start menu because you had more on screen. Or you could look at them in alphabetical order, which you couldn't do in Windows 7. I mean, I often had spent ages looking for an application on Windows 7, especially if it popped up, if it had loaded under a menu, sub-menu, and I couldn't remember what the sub-menu name was. At least under Windows 8 you could find the application under its alphabetical name. So I found it quite a bit easier to use in that respect. But different people like different things. Again, don't make the mistake they didn't listen. They did listen. They chose not to do something. They chose not to do what you think that they should have done about it, perhaps. You also don't know how many people were actually saying, hey, we actually love this. It could well be that they had more feedback from people saying, hey, we love this, than people that said, no, we don't. And then, so if they'd put it back, you'd have had people saying Microsoft don't listen. You don't know the whole story. So I always take things like that with a pinch of salt. Yeah, fair enough, I don't like it, or I do like it, and whether Microsoft listen or not, I don't have the facts to tell. Just because they don't do what I want doesn't mean they didn't listen. They just chose not to do what I would have preferred they did. I mean, I don't particularly care as much for the Windows 10 start menu as I did for the Windows 8. I liked the Windows 7, I like the Windows 8. I kind of prefer those a bit to the Windows 10 menu, which is kind of... It was a long time before I worked out that pin to start menu actually means that right hand bit at the of the menu, not the left hand bit. So it's kind of like, how do I get stuff into that left hand bit of the menu? Don't know. And actually I can't get stuff into the right hand bit of the menu, because if I go into Explorer, click on something and go pin to menu, it doesn't. Now whether that's a bug or something that I'm not doing right, I don't know yet. And I can't put anything but applications on the start menu. And so things like a Java application, which is an application, you can't, because it doesn't have .exe on the end of it, you can't put it on the menu. Shortcuts don't seem to want to go on to the start menu. So if you've got a shortcut to a Java application, you can't launch it. I can pin it, however, to the taskbar. But why do I want to pin thousands of things to the taskbar when I want them in the start menu? So, I'm not greatly enamoured with it, the start menu at the moment, but I'll get used to it. Well, with Metro you had two choices, didn't you? Because the A to Z you couldn't customise, true. But the other bit of it you could. You could add what you wanted to it. I'm thinking about it, probably works the same way as Windows 10 did, but I never noticed it that way before. But you could add stuff to it. You could rearrange the tiles and group them as you wanted. And so that Metro interface on the start menu for Windows 8 was which was your first one, not the second one, which was the alphabetical one, was configurable quite considerably. The one thing that was I don't think was very good, and it's the same on Windows 10, is you can have a tiny tile and you can have a small so you can have a small tile and a medium tile. You can't have a large one. So things like Mail, which is the default Mail with Windows 10, which is a large tile, which is sort of 2 squares wide, you can't create one 2 squares wide. So I use Outlook, so I can't make that 2 squares wide. Yet mail that comes with the operating system is 2 squares wide. Why can't I do that? Seems silly. Why can't I? Things like the mail, I think I can probably make 4 tiles 2 by 2. I can't do that with my own applications. Why? That's something I don't like about it, but rain clouds, that's fine, that's great. Trying out something, trying it for a few months, you still don't like it afterwards. Fair enough, you've tried. It's it does take a little bit of getting used to, and if you find that you don't like it after a decent one, then I think you have a fair, it's fair that you say, I'm going to do it my way and I want it to work a different way, and you reorganize it or whatever to do. I do think I've just installed that 10 minutes ago. I don't like the menu, I'm going to put it back. That's kind of unfair, but Freedy Bloke, good evening, welcome to the studio. And okay on the lurking. Stats. Okay. You're looking at a website for people who do programming. Okay, so you are. Well, a couple of things about a couple of things. You've got a different audience to the majority of the users of the operating system. The way in which groups of people use an operating system differ. I mean, Windows 8 as an operating system was a lot better to program against than Windows 7. It was cleaner, more consistent with the APIs and things like that. But people get used to what they get used to. But just the fact that you're on a particular targeted group of people, then I'm quite sure that they would have their own opinions. But there again, as I say, where's the statistic that talks about how what percentage is the people who voted on that website of the overall feedback that Microsoft received? Yes, you can. I haven't just yet, but I believe there is an option. I'm not sure I can see it now. I recall seeing a way where you can make the start menu full screen. I'm not sure where it is now, but let's see if it's no, I'm not sure, and I'm not about to go digging, but in one of the settings there is a setting that says effectively make the start menu full screen, and that's that makes it look similar to the Windows 8 menu. It doesn't do it in the two. I don't think it does it in the two panels, which was the tiles, and then underneath it, so the second screen below being the alphabet. I think it just makes the window full screen, so you've got more tile space, but you still have the thing on the left hand side. What mic do I use? You like the sound of it. That's an interesting statement, but it's a Rode M5. 3. A Rode M3, that's right, I couldn't afford the 5. It's a Rode M3, which is a desktop microphone. It's kind of an all-round microphone, but with a speech bias. And it's plugged into a Focusrite analog to, sorry, it's Focusrite, but it's Scarlett Solo, which is providing analog to digital and also providing phantom power to the microphone, which saves on batteries. You can put a battery in it, in which case then you just need an analog to digital converter. But the same. A lot of those ones, because it uses an XLR connector, as in sort of professional stage microphone type connectors, or professional recording studio connectors, and a lot of those, the interfaces that will plug into a computer, do provide the phantom power that you need to power the microphones, or to power this particular microphone. Yeah, well, opinions, fear reaper. There is a saying. What is it? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Yeah, you're right. Oh, sorry, see what you mean, Jess. I apologise, Jess. I kind of thought you were asking me if you could make it. Yeah. No, I'm going to try it the way it is and see if I get used to it. And if I get used to it, then I'll leave it. If I don't, or I want to try it the other way for a while, then I'll flip it and see. But Eddie Volguy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. I trust you've had a good day today. I've only just worked out it's Monday, so I've had quite a reasonable day apart from that. Now that's interesting. Very interesting. I've got two. I'm actually watching my stream back on two windows, and both windows have crashed. So I was watching my stream, which I normally do, in a Chrome window, rather than looking at the feedback coming from. As a broadcaster, you've got the dashboard, and on the dashboard is supposedly a preview of your stream. It's not a preview because it's just the stream, so it's not what's going out, it's what's coming back. Anyway, and I don't particularly like watching that one, and normally I tell it to stop, to hide that, just so I don't take up bandwidth feeding two streams back. But tonight I kind of forgot and left it running. That's frozen, and the Chrome window is frozen. Both of them are and it's kind of like, why? Has Twitch done something that stopped it? Just stopped sending me it or something? I don't know. Okay. Painting a trailer, eh? Is this something you're getting all fancy with an airbrush, or is it just a dirty, great big hairy stick and slapping stuff on it? Hey, that reminds me. Was it you, Rain Clouds, that was showing some drawings that you'd done yesterday? Or am I remembering wrongly? Because of course the thought just crossed my mind then that if it was you with a xenomorph, of course we've got 3D bloke on lurking in the background there, who has been painting the xenomorph, and don't know if he's going to be doing that this evening, because I understand he finished Rat Pack on Friday, so of course he may be a little tired of Horace, so he could be doing something else entirely tonight. That's assuming he is actually streaming tonight. Yep. You're painting it gloss with a roller. Okay, well that works quite well. Yes, it was you. I'm glad I remembered. Well, if 3D Block's still around and you would care to sort of drop a link to that in the straight into the chat, Rain Clouds, then you're quite welcome to see what 3D thinks about it, and you never know, 3 may even be painting his version of it tonight. Right, well we've nearly finished with this this dark shadow grass. There you go. I think you might be surprised, Rain Clouds, just how similar your two versions are. In case you didn't catch it, 3D Bloke, Rain Clouds there has done a drawing of Xenomorph, and it looks a similar pose to the one that you're airbrushing. Right, so that's the dark green done. So now at least the locomotive looks like it's stood on something as opposed to floating in mid-air. And there you go, rain clouds. Actually, the thought just crossed my mind there, of course, and that is that 3D bloke is a professional artist, and he recognised the picture, the reference picture that you know, the picture and the reference that you've used from it. So it's got to be a fairly decent image, you see. And 3D knows why I'm laughing. At least I hope he knows why I'm laughing. Right, let's have some green. So we'll do some obvious green like that, and we'll do some lighter green like that. I do have a mid green as well. You know, I'm going to do a light and real green. I think we'll stick with just 2 greens. And what I was looking for then is my needle threader. Have I got enough? Yeah, I think I've got enough. Right. So I'm going to do the light green behind here. Just as a kind of... I'm not sure actually how much of the light green I've got, but I've got 2 large reels of dark green. So, but I'm just thinking the shadow is kind of... this direction is from here. Sunlight is down this way. I don't know. Forget it. I'm trying to justify what I've chosen to do, which is put light green here and the green here. I can't justify it. I'm just going to do it that way. It seems like it's a good idea. There's no, you know, the light angles in this, it's kind of all a bit slightly not botched, exaggerated. Things are in this, you know, not quite as they should be, but it looks okay. Indeed, 3D bloke is totally professional. Alright. Okay, rain clouds, no problem. Alright, 1, 2, 3. Okay, okay, I'm going to do the hard part about this, which is just going to be in this area first, which means I've got to sculpt, which means using a short depth on the needle for this edge and then increasing the depth so we get a rounded edge on the other side. It's not my most favourite part about doing these pieces is the sculpted edges. It's quite quite awkward to do. Mainly because of the limited access, but it does make a sort of a large difference to the finished work to have that rounded edge on it. So whilst it's awkward to do, it's worth doing. Okay. I see you have a crystal ball there, 3D block. Oh dear. One thing I don't like doing with this is working backwards, but you kind of have to do when you're working right close up to the edge of the Okay, DZTX Airwaves. Thank you at the moment for doing that, though it's kind of pointless. You're timed out, and if you carry on as you are, you'll get banned. whilst I kind of hate working with hoops like this, just because of how awkward it is along this, working along the edges. It doesn't work as the alternative would, for example, be to draw a big circle before I start, and then to put this onto something like a large square carrier of some kind. Then I wouldn't have the problem being having the restricted access around the edge here. But the problem you get when you do that is the material has a tendency to stretch and move, and if you use a larger carrier to do it, and then work to the circle that you've drawn, it doesn't always come out circular, and then it looks odd once you take it off the carrier. Whereas if you work with it as it is here on the hoop, it doesn't tend to stretch in the same ways. Because the hoop carries a sort of fairly constant tension all the way around it. If it does stretch, it stretches equally on all sides, and so round stays round. The only other option I kind of have would be, this is a 12-inch hoop, and they're really awkward to get sizes larger than that, but that's my only other option, which I may see if I can find one of these days, just so, because it would be a bit easier to do these edges if I wasn't so close to the edge. Okay, so that's that panel of green. I'll turn it over in a moment. I've got another small panel to do. I always start panels that go to the edge with the edge, because it becomes awkward otherwise to know just where to start changing the length of the needle. So we get a rounded edge. Won't show up greatly, but if you don't put the sculpted edge on, what you get is the edges go all soft and sort of fluffy like, because there's nothing to support the loops on this side. By reducing the size of the loops gradually from a depth of 3 to a depth of 2 to a depth of 1, the depth of 1 is kind of self-supporting. It's that close to the material that it basically can't bend over. So the 1 supports the 2, the 2 supports the 3, and you get an edge that doesn't look sort of woolly and soft in terms of being untidy type soft. And it really does improve the look, but it, as I say, it can be quite fiddly to do. Yeah. Well, it for me on this, it's more to do with this thread here, which comes out the back of the needle. If I'm working towards myself, I can't easily hold this needle sort of upside down, if you see what I mean, with the thread coming out the top. Its natural position, because of these protuberants, it's like trying to hold an airbrush upside down, even if you could do that without the paint coming out. Because the control is on the top, you kind of have to hold it on the top. And this one's kind of like the same with the positioning. But what then happens is this thread gets in your way as you've just punched it down and you're trying to come backwards. It kind of gets in your way, and you're sort of dragging, you end up dragging loops out if you're not careful. So you've got to be really slow and tedious and careful to work towards you. And it sort of, especially when you're working in a restricted, it's a bit easier when you come into these areas because the way you can angle the needle a little bit, but right up against the edge of the hoop, it's a real pain in the neck. Oh, it's I'm going to work on it till it's finished time, is it? Yeah. Right, again, unfortunately you won't really see what I'm doing down in here. I can't really see what I'm doing in here, but I am just going to turn it around. Yeah. It's either that Fear Reaper or the parents have come to, take them to bed. Hmm. Okay, there's another section of green. No, I don't play World of Warcraft, so Laravel, not something I've heard of. Fear Reaper, it's a new one on me. Okay. There is sort of one thing about Windows machines, them always needing to be restarted. That is one thing you can say about them. I think I've got a Linux machine here that probably hasn't been rebooted in a year. And that's only because, well, I suppose that's only because it hasn't had a kernel rebuild, but that is one of the nice things about Linux machines, is they don't need to be rebooted quite as often. Just excuse me a minute, guys. PHP framework. Okay. No, I've never used. Not done a lot of that stuff. Never worked with frameworks like that before. Fear Reaper. About the only one I've thought about was maybe trying Ruby on Rails, something like that, but not really had enough interest, to be honest. Too much other stuff to do. Okay, so that's one lot. Next step up. You have to take a reasonable amount of care doing these edge things to get the loops reasonably close together, especially with the smaller depth 1 loops, because they will show the white through if you're not fairly consistent with the positioning.
Excuse me.
Just a moment again.
All I've got is this little.
Excuse me, back in a second. Right, I'm back.
Fine, isn't it?
Right, that's the edge done. As I say, is the most is the most fiddly bit really. Right. Well, 3D Block, if you've managed to restart your machine, or if you haven't bothered, just give you a 15-minute warning. Feels a bit like I'm backstage at the moment. 15-minute warnings. Mr. Password 01, thank you very much for following. That's most kind of you.
Awesome.
My stream window is frozen again. Must remember to move my fingers out of the way. Yeah, the thread's jammed. There we go. No, it's not a problem. Lots of people often lurk in streams. I do the same thing. Don't expect people to be talking all the time. I mean, it's nice if they do, but you don't have to be. So I've kind of lapsed into concentrating on what I was doing, and then and of course I've gone completely silent. So sorry about that. Kind of when you start working quite fast on this stuff, it does take a little bit more concentration to keep up a very steady spacing with the needle, and also to avoid jabbing your hand underneath if you're supporting the material like I do here. But generally speaking, it's I cannot hold a conversation. And I'm also getting a little bit tired, which also doesn't help. I'm beginning to feel like I could do with a nice cold drink of water. And when you're doing this, part of is you learn the feel. As you pull the needle out, you tend to drag it across the material, and in doing so, you can feel the little ridges. And it's coincidental, but the ridges are sort of about a needle width apart. So as you feel them, you plunge the needle back in, and you can actually do a lot of this by feel, or shall we say the feel augments what you see with your eyes. Because I have tried doing this without looking up, and it's not really possible for me to do anyway. I'm sure there possibly are people that can do that, but that's just that feel is part of what helps me helps me do this quite fast. And the other one is just sort of continuous practice at what is effectively a needle, moving your hand in a needle space each time you plunge the needle through the material. Of course, like fiving arrows, sometimes they don't go where you want them to go, so I do sometimes end up with larger spaces than I intended. Oops, we're nearly out of thread. And that's it. We're out of thread. Old Hat 128, hello from Yorkshire, and hello from Yorkshire. Welcome to the studio this evening. Unfortunately, I'm almost at the end of the stream, however, but thank you, welcome, and thank you for joining. I'll just show what it looks like on the other side. Let's get rid of that little bit there. But there we go. Let me tip this up so we don't get a foreshortening effect on it, but that's what the thing looks like at the moment. I'll drag it back out a little bit. So we've put the dark grass in, starting to put the light grass in. A bit more to do down here before we then put another shade of grass in and do the whole sky. And Old Hat 128, thank you very much for following. That's most kind of you. That's a nice thing to end the stream on. Thank you very much for that comment as well. But unfortunately, it's that time of the night. It's the end of the stream. Been going for almost 2 hours now. It's time I had a drink and cooled off. It's a little warm here in the studio. So what I'm going to do is say that's it for this evening. If there's anybody that's watching that isn't following, I'd appreciate it if you did, but that's of course up to you. If you'd just like to be notified when I go live rather than following, you can also follow me on Twitter. I do tweet when I go live, and not really prolific in tweeting, just any sort of, the only tweets will either be about the stream or about art itself. The details are below the stream window. They'll be on the end plate in a moment as well, but it's at Zaragan Art. On the other hand, Old Hat 128, if you'd just like to catch me on the next stream, I do stream 7 nights a week from 8 PM in the UK, which, since you're in the UK, that's that time tomorrow. If you're not, it's 1900 hours GMT, or in whatever time zone you're in. Take a look at your clock, subtract 2 hours. That would be 8 PM in the UK, and that's the time I generally start streaming from. As I say, 7 nights a week. Thank you all. It's been fun. Hope to see you again on a future stream. Bye bye.